Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. What song's S? Express, is that right? Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, I'm learning. Let's find out more as we watch a brand new My Favourite Blanket. I nearly said colourways.
I know, I thought you were going to say colourways.
1, 2.
How lovely is that? Oh, I can't get over it, how pretty it is. So, when I stop looking at the yarns...
But first, the news.
Very funny. Yes, I've got my spare pair of glasses on today. You really have to pull it out. And did you hear that click? Yeah.
And remove the risk of the whirling disc.
Oh, do you know, don't you want...
This was my problem. It was just waggling all over the place and causing me a nightmare.
I think that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll just put a little bit more there. Pretty.
I just wind and it stays put. Oh, small things keep me happy.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring My Favourite Blanket.
Are you excited?
I'm very excited because this is quite a show, and I shall tell you why. Not only do we have the marvellous yarn dyeing,
Yes.
not only do we have the wonderful knitting, but Kay is also going to show you how to read your knitting as well. Which,
Yes.
if you're anything like me, you're going to need some help. So yes, I love little tips like this because it just means that you don't need to worry so much about the pattern, and it also gives you then more confidence so that you can just blitz through a pattern. When you consider the mistakes I made in a project which I'll be showing you later on today, which is the Hadrians Cowl.
Well, everybody makes mistakes.
They do, but when you get help like this, it alleviates the chance of those mistakes ever occurring.
Hope so.
So I'm very excited. And the other thing as well that's very exciting is I think Kay's been saving this colour up.
Yes.
Yes. It's one of her favourites.
I'm very excited.
Yes, as you'll find out.
You can maybe you can guess why I'm excited.
Right the way through the show, yes. Lots of excitement because the colour is pink.
You told everybody.
I have. Look, we might as well.
Hence my pinkness today.
Let's just get it out there.
Celebrating pink.
Yes, it's going to be just so lovely. And it's a gorgeous inspiration as well. But that's all to come
beautiful.
later on in the show.
Yes.
But first, the news.
Very funny. Yes, I've got my spare pair of glasses on today.
It's good night from me.
Dan changed his ringtone for when I never ring him because he never has his phone switched on. But if I were ever to ring him and his phone was switched on, it now plays the Two Ronnies theme tune when I ring.
Do you know what? I actually really like it.
Which is quite funny. Yeah, it's really good. I can't remember it now. What is it? It's very 70s. It's brilliant.
It's on Apple Music. So it's probably on Google. I don't know. Look, don't start me down that road. But look, it's just search the Two Ronnies theme tune. You'll find it on YouTube as well. It's sort of cool.
It is cool.
The version I found was played by the Northern Jazz Orchestra.
Wow,
it's alive.
It is jazzy. It is a jazzy tune, isn't it?
Big band.
I think
the best type.
I think because growing up you hear it. Oh, we certainly heard it. If you're our sort of generation,
you can see those two glasses appearing on the screen, spinning around. It was a great opening. Yes,
but I've got my spare glasses on today because my other pair are getting re-lensed because
having an MOT.
Yeah, they're getting re-lensed because I've had an eye test, and obviously as you get older, you need new prescriptions.
She kept walking into door frames.
I didn't. It's the reading prescription that's changed. My long distance is fine. I'm really short-sighted. But it's my reading. And that's what goes, isn't it, when you get sort of past a certain age,
now,
let's say.
It's funny in the news that we started with your glasses because things for your eyes have been in the news this week.
Have they?
Yes, because Apple have announced that they have entered the world of virtual reality.
Really?
Yes. They have created this pair of glasses that go on your face, and they're like full goggles.
Goggles.
Yes. Full goggles go on your face. And basically, if you buy a pair of these, they're about £5,000.
Oh, get on, man.
No, they are. If you buy a pair of these, you go into the virtual world of your phone and its apps, or if you look across at your computer, in front of you appears all of the things that would be on your computer. So let's say, for example, let's say you have on these glasses and you want to access an app on your phone. So you would look at your phone, all of the apps would appear before your eyes without you picking up the phone.
Right.
You would then reach out and I think you click your fingers near the app and it opens, and then you flick your fingers like this and you can scroll the screen.
Okay.
And all of this.
Why do we need this?
I'm not qualified to answer that question, Kay.
Right.
But look. These are special because the majority of these units...
They ought to be.
Yes. The majority of these units, you put them on and you're in the virtual world. You take them off and you're not. No, not with the Apple ones. You can go from the virtual world and back to the normal world without removing them. Full goggles.
So you just keep them on all the time?
You do. That's their plan.
Well, this is attractive. What?
That's their plan. You keep them on, and anyone...
Do they look ridiculous?
Yes. Anyone who's moving around you will know if you're in the virtual world because your eyes will appear on the outside of the goggles.
What, like a photograph or something?
No,
like a TV screen?
Yes.
Oh gosh,
So
really?
if Kay had them on,
time developing this?
if Kay had them on, if I could see her eyes, I know she's with me and I can talk to her. If I can't see her eyes, I know she's off.
So now we can't even look at people's
She's
real
off
eyes.
in
We
the
have to look
virtual
at eyes on a TV screen.
Yeah, I know, it's insane. Now, shall I tell you?
This is crazy. I'm sorry, but this is crazy.
Shall I tell you what terrifies me about all this? If I was to take you into our kitchen and I was to play you some music on our Apple Siri, when I ask for the music to desist, Siri tells me there's no music playing.
No, it does, yeah.
When there is.
It's become an amusing thing now. It's like, wait, is it going to do it? And it's like, hey Siri, stop.
Oh, no,
there is
don't.
nothing to stop here. Oh no, it's not. Sorry.
You can't do that in a house anymore, can you?
I haven't got any devices in here.
Thank goodness. If I'd said it, my computer probably would have
I know, yeah.
shut down.
But Siri always says there is nothing to stop here.
I know.
And I'm like, are you deaf even, Siri? Because there's music playing.
I know. So, back to the glasses. If they can't even get Siri right, if Siri doesn't even know when there's music playing or not.
Also, who in today's economic climate, really, who is going to buy these?
Removing that, which is a great argument, Wall-E, it's all true.
It is. It's like we're
watch
living.
Wall-E.
It's like we're living Wall-E.
Because if you put on those glasses and then you stick on the Apple headphones and then they'll bring out a chair that floats.
Yeah.
Because you'd need that, wouldn't you? Because if you don't need to sit behind your computer...
Don't need to physically do anything.
Yeah, the next step, you may laugh, but it's true. The next step is, well,
I'm not
why
laughing.
walk? Why do we need to walk? We need floating chairs. And we can think that they move, and then they do move. It's bananas.
It is all bananas. I do not like all this stuff at all. I want to go back 40 years, please.
Well, we are going back because we are now... We're doing our best to become a non-streaming household. And I'll tell you why. I'm sick of sitting down to watch a movie and then partway through the movie there being a problem with the Wi-Fi. Because everything now is streamed, isn't it? And it happens.
Whirling.
It happens all the time. Yeah. And if you're watching a movie and you partway through and that happens, you're removed from the enjoyment of the movie. So we're going back... Weird for Kay and I, and I'm sure lots of you watching at home, to say that going back in time is buying discs.
Yeah, I know.
Because I'm sure, like us, you'll remember when it was videos,
Videos, which were huge, weren't they?
Yes.
It took up so much space on your bookshelf.
Yeah, well, don't, because now you're playing into the argument of the streamers.
I know. It's
have everything streamed, because
it's conflicting for me.
Up there in the cloud.
Yeah, I know. It's conflicting for me because I don't like clutter in the house. And, bringing more things into the house is a sort of mental thing for me. I'm like, I don't even want to do that. But, when we've been watching a film lately, like Dan bought me a whole... it's fantastic. He bought me a set of all of the Star Trek movies. One of my favourite films of all time is A Voyage Home, the Wales one. I absolutely love that film. And that's one of them on there. And we watched it last weekend on a disc with no risk of it stopping, and it was an absolute joy.
Yes.
You know, you can properly relax because you're not suddenly going to be thrown into like, oh,
let's all go back in
why
time.
has it stopped this time? And oh, is somebody downloading? Or
Back
is
in
somebody...
time to the day of the discs. Now, look, I must just say, for those of you who want to download the Bakery Bears, you can absolutely
Yes,
do
you
that.
can.
You can do that on Apple Podcasts, and you can also do that on Podbean.
Download
and also,
us.
that feeds to an awful lot of other feeds as well.
Go and sit in a field and watch us.
We always link in the show notes how you can access via that way as well at the very bottom of the show notes. So yes, you can download and remove the risk of the whirling disc.
Oh, do you know, don't you want to just throw something at the TV when you see that whirling circle?
Yes. Just before we move on, what we have been enjoying though, through our Siri, as we eat our tea.
We're very contradictory, aren't we?
Well, no, we're not, because what we've actually been doing to alleviate this problem is we've been downloading it to a device, which thus removes the need to stream it from the cloud, which then removes the chance of it suddenly stopping partway through.
Yeah.
Because that is, of course, what happens with the music.
And
Just
we
stops.
even spoke the other day about getting a little CD player for the kitchen.
We did, but the challenge, I think the conclusion we came to was the right thing was some sort of wired extension to a phone.
Yeah.
Because we've got the ability to easily download things to our phones.
Yes.
And so we just want to play it straight from the phone with a wire.
Yeah.
And then, again, there's no chance of
We're going to be
Wi-Fi
getting a
disaster.
record player, aren't we, at this rate? Which is very fashionable, isn't it?
They've got
record
very fashionable
players, yeah.
Very fashionable.
But then you see, that's a lot of things to take up a lot of space.
It is.
And this is what I don't like.
And this is the beauty
I
of...
like not a lot of stuff.
There's wonderful aspects to the modern world in that you can get rid of a lot of this stuff, but then there's also contradictory, frustrating aspects to the modern world, because I have been and always will be your friend.
Yeah, I know. Wrath of Khan. Was that Wrath of Khan?
Yes. Oh,
great films.
They're all great films.
They are, apart from the first one.
Without further ado, I think it's time that I said, Kate Jones, what's on your needles?
Yay. Oh, so I have got a very exciting first project to show you. It's a pair of socks, and there's a very specific reason I'm knitting these socks. But first of all, I've put them in this bag because although the sock design is not festive, the yarn I'm using was a festive yarn, but it doesn't look festive. But anyway, I popped them into my little bag, my mushroom bag, which I turned into a Christmas bag by using some Liberty quilting cotton in all these festive prints. But this is the little mushroom house that we stitched last year during summer of stitching. So I thought I'd use that bag, and I have adorned it with 2 enamel pin badges that I stole off Bryony. Can you see here? We've got, that's Gonzo and Rizzo the Rat, and we've got Kermit over here. And these were in Bryony's Christmas stocking last year. They're from the Disney shop, and she got them in her Christmas stocking. They're from, obviously, Muppets Christmas Carol. And she's never put them on anything. I just saw them in her bedroom the other day on the side, and I said, are you not using those? And she's like, no, not really. So I said, oh, can I put them on a bag? And she's like, yeah, take them. So I stole them.
What a misery.
I know, what a misery. She wasn't using them. She does have loads of, 3 denim jackets now in various colours. And she does have pin badges on them, but they've got to be very specific ones that have a reason. And obviously these ones didn't cut the mustard. Is that the saying? Yeah. So in this bag anyway, I have got a pair of socks, and there's a few reasons I'm knitting these socks. So first of all, I'll tell you what the design is. And I've got a finished pair here to show you, because it
worries me what else you thought it could be.
What?
Cut the...
I don't know. But because I didn't understand the reference. Why do we say it doesn't cut the mustard? You don't cut mustard.
Well, I would guess that there probably is some, but again... Let's save that for our etymology podcast. I got it right, didn't I? Did I?
Etymology, yes.
Good.
Because entomology is insects. We said this before, didn't we? And I thought it was butterflies.
Yes.
But it's insects. Anyway, the pattern is, this is a design of mine, and this is a design that I created 3 years ago.
Brilliant.
I can't believe it's 3 years.
The best moments in life are when you go through your sock drawer, because it happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
And you go, oh my goodness, they're amazing.
Yes, well, these are the Oakworth socks, named because the inspiration was the railway children, and the railway station in that book and film is called Oakworth. Although is it called Oakworth in the book? I'm not sure. But in the film it's Oakworth. And the station is actually called Oakworth, the real station. So I called these Oakworth because they've got these garter bands on that when the sock's on your foot, it looks like a train track either side. And these are the socks I'll show you. Look, can you see? I've worn these quite a lot, but I have just washed them so they're clean. But can you see this garter down here? And it runs down both sides of the sock. So when it's on your foot, and when you look down on your foot, you see the train tracks on your foot. Now, these are a shorty pair, as you can see. And the yarn I used, isn't it lovely? This is from Dandelion and Dogwood, and it was in a colourway called October Unicorn. And I just pulled it out of my stash because I just thought it would work well with this design, and it absolutely did. So these socks, like I said, these were a design that I created for Knitty You.
2020, I think.
2020.
It was our special lockdown event.
It was. And I couldn't believe that it was 3 years ago that I created this design. And what actually happened, so we knit these through the course, and you can...
It's more than a course, Kay.
It's a whole video.
They're like knitting lectures.
Yeah. It's a whole video series. And you can
With
still
Professor Jones.
access... You can still access this series and this pattern if you are a gold or a platinum patron. So you do still have access to this, and if you become a new patron, you would also have access to it. So
it is gold or platinum.
Gold or platinum.
Yeah.
And so it is a pattern that's still there. And when I knit these, right, I never put them on my foot. I just knit them, completed them, and I gave them to Bryony, like I do lots of pairs of socks. And recently, Bryony wanted to sort all of her socks out. So I said, right, do you know what we'll do then? We'll pull them all off your shelf, because she's got them stacked on her shelf now.
That was newsworthy in itself, wasn't it? Her wanting to sort out.
She wanted to do it herself. And you know what? She went in her bedroom the other day when we were doing some work, because it was school half term, and we were working. And she said, I'm going to go in my bedroom and I'm going to tidy some things. Well, I nearly fell off my chair.
She did, actually. She fell off her chair and broke her glasses, and that's the reason why they're at the opticians.
Yeah. She's never, ever done that independently. But off she went. I said, off you go, darling. Off she went and shut her door and she put some music on, and she had a lovely time. She sorted through loads of books. So we've got loads of books that went to the charity shop that she's read and she don't want to read again. And so we sorted her socks out. We did that together. And I said, what we'll do, I have a basket of socks, which is like an overflow basket. So I said, right, we'll get all those out and we'll go through everything and we'll decide which ones you want to put into your rotation for now. So we did all that. And during that process, I came across these socks. And I said, oh, do you want these ones? And she said, oh, they're really short. I'm not really into short socks. So I said, but that's fine. I said, I really like short socks. So I will take them and wear them at bedtime with my pyjamas. So I did, and I put them to one side, and then that night I had my shower, put my pyjamas on, and I put these socks on, and I was like, these are the nicest socks I've ever put on my feet. I'm not kidding you.
Would you say that when you put on those socks that you departed for Cloud 9?
Is that a place?
We
were on a train.
Yes.
Train tracks.
Yes, you departed.
That's just what it was like. I honestly, I put them on my feet. I was like, oh, these feel absolutely amazing. And I think what it was, or what it is, it's a combination of the pattern and the yarn. The yarn actually isn't one that I would have immediately, the base I'm talking about, isn't one that I would immediately have thought would be my favourite, because it's a 2-ply and it's an 80-20 2-ply. So it's got that very specific look to it. It looks like a rope, you know what I mean. And usually I prefer a 4-ply. So that really surprised me. It's really soft. Also, what I realised was, because I'd never put these on my feet, what I realised when I put them on my feet was the design, and I'll show you from the sort of top of the foot so you can understand what I'm saying. So here's the top of the foot. So you can see you get these train tracks running down here. But what that allows, that little garter detail there, and it runs up the leg, what it allows, particularly for me with a high instep, is over the gusset area, it takes, do you know, like where sometimes you put socks on and they, even though you've done a heel flap and gusset, sometimes your stitches are a little bit stretched out over your gusset. There's no stretching of this stocking stitch section here over my instep, because the little bit of garter here absorbs that, because garter's really stretchy, isn't it? So I found that the garter stretches out, but the actual stocking stitches over my instep are perfectly neat and not stretched at all. And because of that, it makes these socks so comfortable, I cannot even tell you. And so I think it is definitely a combination of the yarn, which is lovely and soft, and that pattern. So of course I was like, right, I need to make myself another pair of these socks. So of course I wanted the exact yarn, because I feel like it's alchemy. Like I've discovered some kind of witchcraft with this pair of socks, because I've never put a pair of socks on my feet when I've thought, this is perfection. I'm like Mary Berry with her sheer perfection statement, honestly. So I thought, right, I've got to recreate everything, recreate what I did. So when I did this series, it was a DPN series. So I thought, right, I've got to knit them on DPNs. I've got to use the same size. I don't know, I haven't looked at the videos actually to see what specific DPNs I used, but I'm using my favourite wooden DPNs. I'll show you in a second. I've got to use the same yarn base from the same dyer, because it's all got, otherwise it's not going to work. So what I did, I didn't have any full skeins of dandelion and dogwood in my skein. I can't speak, I'm so excited about these socks because they're so comfortable. I didn't have any full skeins of dandelion and dogwood in my stash, so I've actually ordered a couple of sock sets which haven't arrived yet. I think I might get them today. But what I did have in my stash was the remainder of an advent calendar of minis that I purchased, I think it's certainly 2 years ago. I'm not sure if it's 3. But it was when it's Amy, isn't it? Yes, it's Amy. When Amy did this series, I was really drawn in straight away because it was Agatha Christie themed. And I was like, I'm all over that. So I purchased it that year, and I didn't do anything particular with the minis at the time, and I've sort of used them in various scrappy projects over the last couple of years, but I did have a number of them left, and I was like, right, what base are they? Is it the same base? And I went and looked, and yes, they're the same base. It's the 80/20. I can tell just from looking at them. So I was like, right, I'm going to choose a few of these minis. I'm going to make myself another pair of Oakwood socks. Great joy and happiness. So I will show you the sock now that I'm knitting. Now, although these ones knit up beautifully, the colours are lovely, and I like the way that it's been dyed. I think it knits lovely. The minis so far have not been dyed in the same way, and although the colours are all beautiful, I will show you the ones I've chosen. The colours are gorgeous. It's not knitting up very prettily. However, I'm now more in love with these socks because I'm embracing the kind of, I don't want to say ugly because that's not a very nice word, but I really am embracing that. And the more swirly and flashy and pooly these knit up, the happier I am becoming, because I've now decided that that's going to make them even more special. So I'll show you where I'm up to. I've just completed the heel flap and the turn. So I'll show you this side and you can see what I mean about the yarn. So look, it's kind of making me twitchy, but I started off with one colour up here and you can see even that one. Can you see how it's done a flashy pooly thing? There's like a peach and a beige. And then I moved into this blue and can you see what it's doing? It's doing this flashy thing again. but I've carried on with this same colour through the heel flap, and of course it's knit up differently in the heel flap, and I think it looks really nice in the heel flap. So what I'm going to do is I'm using 3 minis per sock, but the cuffs and the toes will be the same on each sock. So it'll be this peachy browny one on each sock, but then I'm using 2 other minis for the body on each sock. So this blue one will make half of the, so it'll come halfway down here, if you know what I mean, and then I'll use another mini to get me to the toe, and then I'll switch back to this one for the toe, and then the other sock I'll use a different yarn. So the one I started with, that peachy and browny one, is this one, and that one was Miss Marple. So it's this lovely, you can see what I mean about the colours, they're just beautiful, peaches and browns. And then this blue one that I'm doing now is Cyanide, and again when it's in the little ball it just looks beautiful, doesn't it? And then the other ones that I've got that I'm going to use are Tea and Scandal, which is sort of pinks, and I think it's that same sort of beigey brown. Really pretty. We've got Death on the Nile, and this one is sort of a different shade of blue with a sort of rosy pink. And then the last one I've got is Pocket Full of Rye, and this one is sort of more grey and that same sort of beigey again. So, you know, when I got these minis with the Agatha Christie theme, being completely honest, I would have really liked to have known what specifically inspired the colourway related to the name of the yarn. So for example, Death on the Nile, and I've got a bluish and sort of like an aqua blue and a pink. You know, what was it from either the book or the film that inspired that colourway? And I don't know that. It was literally just called that in a little envelope with the yarn. And because, you know, the reason I say that, and everybody's different, and other people might not have been bothered by this at all, or might not have even thought about it. It's very pretty yarn, you know, you're getting a very pretty mini every day, and it's Agatha Christie themed, and that could well have been enough for a lot of people. But whenever it's because I sort of relate it to the way that I create things. And when I create a series, or when I create a design, or anything really, I always want to link whatever the design is or whatever the colourway is. If I'm dyeing, I always want it to be related to the inspiration. And as you know, when I've explained things in the past, sometimes it's really detailed because I've had that inspiration and I want to reflect the colourway or the design in that inspiration. So I really would have loved this so much if on the little card here, or even if it was on a separate piece of paper that you can read afterwards, if it had just said, oh, you know, this colourway was inspired by this scene in the book, or by this scene in the film, or by this character. We see this character as, you know, maybe she dresses a lot in flowery cardigans or whatever. Whatever it was, the inspiration, I would have really liked that. But anyway, that's just me. But all that being said, I'm really enjoying knitting these socks again. So you can see it's got that garter panel down either side, and I'm just loving them. And I'm using double points. These are Knit Picks Sunstruck. So they're like all of the sort of other wooden needles from them, but they're not coloured. And I really like that because they're a light colour and I find it easier to see my stitches. Really, really enjoying it. And this pattern, this design, has got a garter-edged heel flap, which I haven't done in years. I probably haven't done one since I knit these socks. So that's really fun. And I'm really looking forward to picking up stitches there. And the other thing I've done when I've re-knit this is I've made, because it's a square heel turn, so I've used a little technique to neaten up the edges of the heel turn. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm really enjoying having those being really neat. So I'm really loving knitting these socks. I can't wait to have another super, super comfortable, amazing pair. And like I said, I've ordered some sock sets as well. So I think I might use those and just have a whole collection of Oakworth socks because they've all got to be the same. I just feel like if I change something, they won't be quite so yummy. Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
I'm not going to dwell on this at all because you've been seeing it for about 50 years.
Well, not for much longer.
And it's about to be finished.
Not for much longer.
So it will be a swift ride through the Hadrians Cowl.
Right.
And I bet lots of people actually have been for a swift ride along Hadrian's Wall because you see lots of cyclists. And I think it's popular.
I thought you meant on a horse.
Oh,
then.
that'd be fun.
That would.
I've
never ridden a horse, but I liked it. Oh,
it hurt.
Did it?
Yes, but I
think you've
just
got
get
to
a
get,
comfier
like,
saddle.
used
You have to
to
get
it.
the. You have to.
You see, if you're Ayla, she just puts on like a leather skin.
It's
over
called a saddle, dear.
It's not a saddle.
No, I know,
Ayla didn't
I
use
know.
a saddle.
Look. So Hadrian's Cowl, exceptional.
Yes.
Thoroughly enjoyed knitting this, and this was the one which would have been finished ages ago, but you may recall from the last time I showed it that I'd messed it up because I knitted this bit wrong because I didn't look at the pattern. I didn't read my knitting, and I guessed it was 2x2 and it's actually 3x3 for a more elongated brick. Simon Thurley.
It's brick shape, isn't it?
Yes, it
rather than
is.
Square.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Simon Thurley would be very excited.
He would.
We love Simon Thurley.
We do.
I think he's now chairman of something to do with the National Lottery, but he used to be head of English Heritage.
Yeah.
And he also used to appear back in the day on Time Team. He's my type of guy.
Oh, we love him.
Because he's like a little elf who gets all excited about, anything that he's looking at. He's like an
It's very excitable
Yorkshire Terrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's so knowledgeable about what he's talking about. And, specifically it's buildings and the Tudor and
architecture, isn't it?
I could talk to him over a cup of tea and a nice slice of cake.
Oh, he'd love that.
For a long time.
I think he would love that. He'd be there all afternoon chatting with
Yes, he would. So, yes, this is the Hadrian's Cowl, and I will have finished this imminently, and Kate intends to release this as a pattern.
Oh, yes, I
and
will.
that's all because of...
Why not?
I think it's been because you've seen it so often, you've grown to love it as much as I have, and I only had a message yesterday from someone called Stephanie saying how much she wished that you would release the Hadrian's Cowl.
Well, yeah, I definitely will.
So we can tell you here, right now, that she will.
Yes.
Which is very exciting.
And you're on the ribbons, so you're nearly done.
That's right.
So, once it's complete, then we'll have to get it washed and blocked and photographed, and I've got to write the pattern properly because I just sketched it out for Dan.
Let's show it in What's Off Your Needles when you release it.
Okay.
Yes, I think, well, or not.
Look, I've just noticed that when I did this for Dan, I sketched out a little drawing of what it kind of was going to look like for him, just so he could see the colour placement.
She did pretty good.
It's not bad, is it?
That's the way.
It's just so he could see where the colours were going to lie.
Coolest bit of everything for me with this is when I did this ribbing first time, it was hard and it was pushing my abilities to the max. This time, it seems fine.
It's a non-standard rib, I would
lovely.
say. Yeah, it's really pretty.
Yes, and really enjoying knitting it. Yes. And normally I get bored with ribs.
And it's the Reggio Merino yak.
Yes.
And look, I wrote the colours on the pattern. I've written the colours on the pattern.
Yes.
So there's grass green.
Yes.
And teal Meliert.
Yes.
Meliert.
Lovely.
I'm probably saying that wrong.
What else is on your needles?
Oh, right, okay. I need to show you the progress on my reading shawl.
Oh.
Now, I'm just leaning down to grab that because I want to show you that in a sec.
We also call this the injury shawl.
Oh, right. I haven't worked on this for a few days because I've been doing too much knitting.
Her finger can't deal with it.
I get this. I've had this before. Do you remember when I hurt my finger before and I had to stop knitting for like a week and I did cross stitch instead? I did those little octopuses. Well, the same thing has happened, and I know that it's because I've been knitting a lot of things that are quite heavy. And the way that I knit, I've been sort of analysing it recently, and when I knit, I sort of it's this finger here that I'm having problems with, the joint here. I don't know if it's the ligament or the muscle or what it is, but I sort of curl my finger around like this, and I think there's been weight on that finger and I've strained something. So it's better than it was, because I had to stopped knitting on the reading shawl, unfortunately, which is highly frustrating. I have still done quite a lot since, and I'll show you now. So here is the reading shawl, and it is becoming quite vast. However, I think it's going to be okay. Do you know how I was worried about it, the way that the coloured sections, how thick, how wide they were going to be as I got down? Well, I'm now on section 9 out of 12, and this section will have 4 garter ridges, and my last one had 4 garter ridges. And knowing how much I'll have like 1.5 grams left of each yarn, so I think even the next one after I'll still get 4 garter ridges. So what I'm saying is, I think this design, I think it's okay in terms of it looking how I want it to look. So I mean, I'm really pleased with that. So the challenging thing now is going to be showing you this, because it is a beast of a thing. I know when I finish this, I think it's gonna be the most favourite thing I've ever knitted. I know I've just gone on about those socks. This is obviously the episode of vastly favourite things. I'm just gonna absolutely love this. So this is the shawl so far, and last time I showed you, I think I'd just got onto the dark green section, I believe, the jewel green section, and now I am onto the purples, and it's just gorgeous. So we started up here with the sort of reds, and I put in that sort of browny red as well just there. And then I'm doing it in a sort of vague rainbow, because I knew doing it in that sequence would look aesthetically lovely, because anything that is nature themed, I think, just works, doesn't it? Because nature gets it right. So then we go into the oranges, golds, the sort of limey green, into the jewel toned green, and then into the blues. So we've got this bright aqua blue, then an indigo, and now we're into the purple. So I'm starting with this violet, which is just gorgeous. And I've got 1 more garter ridge to work in that. These are the 2 yarns I'm using. One is a very pretty violet, just sort of a fairly pure violet, I would say. And the other is more pinks and blues together. But when you sort of mix those two and look at it, overall, it does give an overall violet colour, I feel. And it's just amazing. And so it's huge, it's huge, and it's just exactly what I wanted. And I just can't wait to wrap this around me. I mean, look how gorgeous it is and big. Isn't it just lovely? So my working the contrast colours in a graduated way, I think is looking lovely. Can you see it starts out thicker and then it starts to go down, and I'm even down further now in terms of how wide it is. I think that just looks so lovely. So I'm using 2 yarns held together for this, 2 fingering weight yarns held together, and 4.5mm needles, higher bamboos, which have been brilliant. I would say they're my favourite needles. I do very much like wooden needles. I only really use metal needles for magic loop sock knitting. Other than that, I love wooden needles because I find they're a bit easier on my hands. They're more tactile for me and softer in a way than metal. So I'm using an advent calendar of minis for this, which was from Pixie Yarns, and this is all I've got left now. Just the purples, look. So that's exciting. That's not one of them there, that's a bit of leftover from something else, but it's these purples that you can see. So just loving it, just absolutely still loving it. And I've had loads of people ask me if I'm going to release this as a pattern. And my response to everyone has been, well, I'm just sort of seeing how it turns out, because until I've finished it, I can't say for definite that it's exactly what I wanted. But so far, I'm really loving it, and fingers crossed, as long as it all works out,
No pitfalls.
Yeah, that nothing else happens. So it's not a definite yes, but it's a possibly. So if it all works out, then I don't see any reason why not to. Because, I always think, although this is a garter-stitch shawl, effectively, but I try not to these days. I try not to overanalyse something in terms of, is it too simple? Is it just like other things? Is it this? Is it that? And I try not to do that anymore. And I try to really focus on, this is a design that's come entirely out of my head. Yes, it has. That was a question to myself. Is this a design? And the answer is yes. Have I really enjoyed it? Yes, I've really, really loved it. And is it something that I think other people might enjoy? Yes, it is. So that's the sort of process that goes through my head. And I try not to get any other noise going into my head so that it stays kind of as pure as possible. I'm being honest to myself and true to myself with it.
The way you have to think about it, I'm sure we've spoken about this before, but the way you have to think about it is it's exactly the same as chefs release a recipe for spaghetti bolognese.
Yeah, because there's a million recipes, isn't there?
Yeah, but every chef does it in a slightly different way.
That's right.
And what you're buying into is the way that chef does it.
Yes.
Because you trust that chef. Maybe you've had some of that chef's food before.
Yeah. It's like, I always make Mary Berry's chocolate cake because that one is the best. And
but
it's the
if
one
you go and Google chocolate cake, you'll find a lot of recipes.
Absolutely. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's just...
Method.
Yeah.
Actually, what people actually want more now than anything, when you look at old patterns gave the information that you needed to be able to create it.
Yes.
New patterns teach you how to knit it.
That is true.
And that's what people expect.
Yeah, that is true.
People expect now a whole experience.
Yeah, that is true. And, the thing with this design as well is that it leaves so much open to your own creativity. You could knit this in so many different ways. Yes, you can use an advent calendar like I have, but you absolutely don't need to. You could just use all your leftovers, and you could arrange them in a way that really pleases you. If you love a particular colour, say your favourite colour is blue, you could just go into your stash and get all of your blue yarns out and think, right, I'm going to knit myself one where all of the coloured stripes are blue, and then you just maybe use a cream as the contrast. You're celebrating that love of your leftover stash and all of those lovely colours. There's so many different options, and it's just been such a joy to knit. And the other thing I'll say is, the rows are long. I've never knit an item before that has rows as long as this. And I always thought I didn't like long rows. Turns out I don't have an issue with it at all. And what I really love about it is you get through your yarn really quick. It seems that you get through your yarn really quick. Because by the time you've done a row, you've used loads of yarn because the rows are so long. So I've actually been really loving that, and I don't see that as a barrier at all, the fact that the rows are really long. So
cool.
Yeah, loving it, and I'll keep you posted on the reading shawl.
This is the Aaron Harper Gansey. I've knitted in a whole other skein of yarn and another bit of yarn
lovely.
Since I saw you last. It's not too much of the new skein of yarn. There's a lot of knitting going into that since I last showed it, but you can't really see a lot of it. So again, I won't dwell, but it's lovely, and the colour work is really nice. And the last time I showed this, and I think it was more probably the first time I showed this, that I was slightly critical of the yarn, and still. I don't like it as much as the fingering Waite, Jameson and Smith, and I don't like it as much as the Lopi, but I appreciate very much the fabric it's knitting up. It's very nice.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful, in fact, that Kay has decided she's having this.
I might steal it.
And that's cool by me. So what I'm going to do is I will just knit the sleeves K length and the body K length, and everything will be lovely.
Yeah, it's really, the fabric is so nice.
And then in the space of a few months, I will create you a tank top and a full sweater, and you'll be set.
Look how lovely that'd look on me.
Beautiful.
It's so tactile, this
Yeah.
fabric. I just want to stroke it. It's absolutely gorgeous.
That's why I've grown to appreciate working with the yarn.
Because it's so lovely. And it's not, I mean, you can tell it's wool. You can tell it's wool, you know? But it's not like the Letlopi at all.
I really like the smell.
Yeah, it smells lovely. It smells like, it's not full-on sheepy.
But sheepy enough.
Yeah.
Clean sheepy.
It does smell really nice. And the colours that Dan's used
Spring lamb sheepy. All clean from the washing machine. Don't speak of that. Ours is just broken.
Our washing machine's just broke, literally, right? I've just done 2 loads of washing this morning, and the second load, I walked over to the washing machine as it was spinning. There's water all over the kitchen floor. I was like, what is going on?
It's just the seal on the front, but we're going to get a new
The
one.
seal on the door's gone, but it's been making a funny noise for a while.
Yeah,
so anyway, yeah. So this is the Jameson and Smith.
So yes, you know, I was critical to start with. I've definitely come round because of keep showing the colourways. I've definitely come round to the finished fabric because it feels so great, as Kay said.
Yeah.
I think personally, I don't know. I mean, I might knit something for myself in this as well, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes with you, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll just see what it's like when it's finished.
It's sort of fun, though, that it went from being my jumper to your jumper in 1 second.
Well, he was knitting it last night, and I just leaned across and thought, I always have to have a little stroke while he's knitting it because it's so nice. And I said, oh, that would look really nice on me, wouldn't it?
Well, it would. It would. And so I actually think Kay will appreciate it more than I will.
Yeah.
But because I'm fairly set anyway, I've got 3 Letlopis.
It'd be lovely at Christmas, wouldn't it? If I
absolutely.
wore that at Christmas. Because it's got something going on the yoke, hasn't it?
Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't be knitting it.
No.
The yoke is where the fun begins.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the
And I
sleeves
love
are
the
fine.
colours.
Yes, well, you chose them.
Well, that's true, but I didn't choose them with me in mind.
No, but they will suit you just fine.
Yeah. Isn't it lovely?
So Aaron Harper-Gansey, and like all the patterns that we mentioned that are available to purchase, they're always linked in the show notes below.
Lovely.
What else is on your needles?
Okay, so the last thing I've got just to update you on is my mitered square project, because I have done another row and I had to stop myself yesterday from adding in another square because it would have been the colours that you're about to see me dye today. I thought, I can't show you that before you've seen the colours, can you? That'd be a big spoiler. So I've got the leftovers in my bag here.
What's super
exciting? I can't show you.
It's super exciting though, because Kay will be showing you in what's off your needle something knitted, not blanket.
Oh, yes.
With the colourways that you're going to see today.
Yes, that's true.
So that's really cool as well.
You'll see them knitted up in something else, which I think is really good.
Yeah. It is. It's nice that, I think, because different things knit up in such different ways,
Absolutely.
don't they?
Particularly like speckled yarn, it can knit up completely differently in, for example, a pair of socks to a blanket. So the thing that you'll see finished is in the round 56 stitches, whereas the blanket is obviously like loads of stitches. Yeah, that was very helpful, wasn't it? Loads of stitches. But what I have done on my mitered square project is I've put in the last colours. So these are the Himalayan Blue Poppy, was the last one that we had. And look at it now. Oh, it's so pretty. So you can see the green and the blue down the outside edge are the last colours that I put in. So I'm ready now to add in the ones that you will see me dye in a second. But it's just lovely, this project. It's really, it'd be nice as like a shawl or something.
What is this going to be again?
Well, I'm going to make it into a table runner.
Right.
How many have I done now? I've done 6 across, so it's going to be twice as long as this.
Yeah.
And 4 deep, obviously, is how it's going to stay. So I think that'll be a nice length for a table runner. I think that'll be really nice. And when I've done it, I'm going to do an I-cord border. I'm going to pick up and do an I-cord border all the way round the edge. It's a sort of you work it as you go. You know, you don't pick up like all of the stitches and then bind off. You just work it as you go. It's like in my jelly roll blanket. It's the same sort of edging, and I'm just going to do that in the cream. This is just an undyed 8515, the same base as we're dyeing for all of the colours. But it's really nice just to see all of the colours together in a project. And even after I've knit them into this, I've still got these left over. So these are the sort of leftovers of my leftovers from the blanket. So I'll definitely still have enough to do like a pair of scrappy socks, which will be really nice. So that's lovely, isn't it?
So have you worked out how long... So this is all the yarns that you're dyeing in My Favourite Blanket?
Yes.
And how long is it going to be when you've finished? Have you worked that out? Or are you going to need to extend it? Or
it's going to be twice as long as it is now.
Right. And that will be all the yarns from...
Yes.
Right. Brilliant. And so there won't need to be any additional length on it?
I don't think so.
Right.
No, I don't think... If I think it needs a bit more length, I suppose what I could do is rather than do an I-cord edging, I could pick up all the way along and do like a log cabin type edging. Rather, that'll add a bit of width either side. But I don't think it'll need it because it's this wide now. How wide do we think that is? I don't even know. I mean, it could be 20 inches. So it might be sort of 40 inches long when it's done. I think that's long enough for a runner. I'll just see what it looks like on the sideboard once I've finished it. And if I'm happy with that length, then I'll just do an I-cord border. But my squares, I've knit them the same way that I knit all of my mitre squares, and it's the method that's in my Stitching Time blanket. I've used a different stitch count. These are 49 stitches, because I wanted them slightly bigger. They're just a little bit smaller in the Stitching Time blanket. But of course, you can make your squares whatever size you want. I always use an odd number of stitches. I know some people use an even number of stitches for their mitered squares. I always use an odd number. So as long as it's an odd number of stitches, you can make them whatever size you want. It's entirely up to you. But, my method of picking up and everything is what I use in my Stitching Time.
It's very neat.
Well, thank you very much. I have woven in all of my ends apart from the ones on the outside here, because I haven't woven these ones in because I don't like weaving in ends until the end is like completely enclosed around. I just find it a lot easier. So I will weave in all the edge ones, particularly if I'm going to do an I-cord. It'll be dead easy because I could, in theory, just weave them along because an I-cord is a tube, isn't it? I could just thread them in the tube, but I'll see. Anyway, I'll decide on that. But all the other ones, like in the centre bit, are all woven in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting in the next colours. I really honestly did have to stop myself yesterday. I picked up the yarn, I went to start it, and then I was like, oh, I can't do this because I'll be showing it before you see me dye the yarn. So
did I see correctly that just looking at blankets like that, did I see correctly that one of our Bakery Bear patrons shared a picture of the quadrophenia where she'd created small...
Oh, yes. So Nicola, lovely Nicola.
Nicola's one of our Bakery Bear patrons.
She's one of our patrons, and
we have a private Facebook group where people share photos and things. I mean, to be fair, people actually often send us photos, patrons, that we then share on our patron-only show at the end of the month. But she shared this in the Facebook group.
She did, but Nicola has also become a really good friend as well, and she test knits a lot for me. If I've mentioned Nicola recently from a fairground socks, she test knit those. But yeah, she test knit me the quadrophenia blanket. And recently she's come up with her own sort of modification of that, and she's doing these little triangles.
So are they about that size, do you think?
No, I think they're a bit bigger than that. It might be that it comes out like 4 of these, maybe.
Wow.
And then she's like me, she likes seaming, so she's seamed them together, and it looks it's absolutely beautiful. So I love it when people do that. They take one of my designs and then they, their creativity goes off and they come up with something else that's individual to them, and I think that's just amazing.
Inspiration quite often breeds inspiration.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
As I'm sure Ed Sheeran would say in his current court cases, where he's been accused of copying everyone else's songs.
But how funny, right? We've been listening to some 80s music recently, and one of the tracks...
What do you mean recently?
Well, we always do. Actually, I'm a recent convert to classical music.
She's indeed.
I have and there's a specific reason I've been listening to classical music, and I'm not going to tell you what it is.
The King!
Well, that's one of the reasons. The coronation was one of the reasons. But actually, I was listening to classical music before that as part of something that I'm creating.
Oh, yes.
Coming up later in the year.
Stop it.
So, yeah, I'm not going to say any more. But I've just become absolutely obsessed with classical music to the point of asking Dan to create me a playlist. So I said, look, you know the sort of things that I like. Will you make me a playlist?
A terrifying proposition to a musician.
Yeah, but...
Because I disappeared.
You were like, yeah, I'll do that, I'll do that.
Hole.
And then he went into his little musical hole and created me this playlist. And one of the pieces of music, it's a Beethoven piece. And I heard, the first time I heard it, I was like, what is this amazing thing? And I'm sure Dan will put the details below. Will you link?
Yeah, isn't it the Symphony No. 2 in D minor?
It is. It's Symphony No. 2 in D major.
D major, sorry. And second movement.
Third movement.
Sorry.
Third movement.
The Allegro.
Well, I don't mind which one it is, actually.
Yeah.
There's Allegro and there's a slightly slower version of it.
But it's the third movement that is your favourite.
Third movement.
Right.
So Symphony No. 2, D major, third movement.
Yeah.
It just absolutely blew me away. And I was out walking when I first listened to it. And Dan also put loads of other stuff on that. I can't tell you what's on there because it's related to something else. But anyway, this particular one, I must have just kept playing. Go back to it. And I was out walking and I must have listened to it for 40 minutes straight, just over and over and over. I absolutely love it. And then I went searching for it on YouTube because I wanted to watch actual orchestras playing it.
Yeah.
And I found a bunch and that was all amazing. And then Dan taught me all about what a symphony is and how it's created. And I've loved it. So I've been learning. It's been brilliant. I've been learning about classical music and just loving it.
And picking up on that theme of music sounding like other pieces of music, we were listening to Holst the other day.
Yes.
And literally, you listen to that and you can hear loads of elements of John Williams' Star Wars.
It was the planets, wasn't it? The Planet Suite.
Yeah, Jupiter and Mars in particular. You listen to that and it depends what films you love, but we obviously know Star Wars really well and you can hear it in the music.
Yeah.
I mean, John Williams' music is exceptional, but he clearly has been inspired.
Yes.
Hugely.
Because we played it at tea one day and said to Bryony, what does this make you think of?
Bryony was coming out with specific scenes.
She was.
From the Star Wars
She's
films.
like, oh, this is from Star Wars when this was happening. And we're like, it's not.
It's not. Amazing.
But yeah, we were listening to an 80s song recently as well, and it's one bit of it sounded exactly like a BTS song.
Somebody Brown, is it?
I can't remember what it was.
Oh, you're terrible, because you told me what it was.
I know, I've heard it a few times. But
Somebody Else's Guy.
Somebody Else's Guy, it was. And there's a section in it that sounds...
It's a keyboard break.
It sounds exactly like Butter, BTS Butter.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing.
Look! It's time.
Yes.
For another My Favourite Blanket. Yes, it's back. And what's even more wonderful is our little wood that we've been enjoying all series, it's getting ready to burst into flower.
It really is.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's so full and so happy with itself.
Yeah.
So to celebrate that wonderful occasion, Kay has saved and is going to unveil what probably is, although who knows what else is going to come in this series, but it's definitely her favourite colourway so far.
Yes.
So what was the inspiration for this gorgeous colourway, and what is this gorgeous colourway? We know it's pink. Let's find out more as we watch a brand new My Favourite Blanket.
I adore creating and knitting blankets, so I decided to design a new one just for us. In this series, I'm going to show you how to make your own, from the yarn to the stitches. Join me as we knit through the seasons to create my favourite blanket. Welcome everybody to
another episode of my favourite blanket, and we are back in our lovely woodland. I barely recognised it because everything has grown so hugely since we were last here, in the month since we were last here. Really everything, and there's a whole row as we just walked through before we got into this little woodland. Just the bank that's next to the railway line, actually, it was just covered in honeysuckle. There was honeysuckle and forget-me-nots, and there's hawthorn that's all in flower, and cow parsley. It's so pretty and lovely, but so much greener than when we were last here. However, it's really lovely and cool today. So we are back here in our little woodland today to tell you about the flower for this this episode. I'm so excited about this one because this one is all of the pinks. So if you, like me, you love pink, this flower is for you, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I've been so excited to get to this point because today we are focusing on a rose, and the rose that I've chosen today is just, it's like rose perfection. It's the David Austin rose, and it's called Queen of Sweden. It is the most beautiful rose. Very full, cup-shaped flowers. The most gorgeous shade of pink. It actually, when it opens up initially, it's got a slight apricot tinge to it, and we're taking an element of that into the dyeing that we're going to be doing. But yeah, it's this gorgeous shade of pink. It's just so beautiful, and the flower itself is so gorgeous. It's got like rich green leaves, and oh, it's absolutely beautiful. It's a shrub rose, and it's actually good for lots of different conditions. It likes most soil types, and it's good for sun, and it's also good for slightly shady areas as well. So a really good all-rounder, I would say. Now, this rose was introduced in 2004 to commemorate the 350th anniversary of the Treaty of Friendship and Commerce between Queen Christina of Sweden and Oliver Cromwell of Great Britain in 1654. So that's an amazing thing, isn't it? That they developed this rose particularly to commemorate that event. And it's just, I'm so glad they did, because it's just so beautiful. I can't get over how pretty this rose is. So you will have seen a picture of it now, and I hope you agree with me, it is absolutely gorgeous. So of course, before we can get knitting our blanket with this gorgeous inspired yarn, we need to get into the kitchen and get it dyed up. I can't wait. So let's get back to the kitchen. Gorgeous Queen of Sweden inspired yarn. Oh, I'm so excited for this one because it's all the pinks. I'm sure I've already said that, but great excitement. So first thing we're going to need is the yarn, and as always this is exactly the same as I've been doing the whole way through this series. What I'm going to be dyeing up today is 2 colourways, and each of those colourways I will use 2 50-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. So in my bowl here soaking, I've got 4 skeins of 50 grams of fingering weight yarn. So each of these skeins is 200 metres, and I'll be doing 2 in each of the colours. So it's the equivalent of 1 100-gram skein, just in case you can't get 50-gram skeins and you're dyeing up 100 grams. So 4 skeins in there, and this blend is the same. I'm using the same blend the whole way through. It's an 85-15, so 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. So that's been soaking away in my bowl with some warm water and a scoop or so, a tablespoon or so I guess, of citric acid. That's the next thing I will show you since I've spoke about it. So this is the citric acid. This is the substance, chemical if you like, that will make the dye permanently stick to the yarn. So you can use vinegar if you prefer white vinegar. I don't like using vinegar because it smells, basically, is the reason why. I prefer citric acid. It's in a dry form, it's food safe, non-toxic, really easy. We've then got our pots. So I've got 2 stainless steel casserole pots that I use to dye in, same as you've seen before. So as always, with all of your equipment that you use for your dyeing, only use it for dyeing yarn. So once you've used any of these things for dyeing yarn, only then ever use it for dyeing yarn, because the dye powders are toxic. So that's our yarn and our mordant. So next I've got just something to protect my work surfaces, because I'm in the kitchen here and I'm sure a lot of you will be as well. So you just want something to protect your work surfaces, and what I really like using lately is just a spare piece of oilcloth. It's really good because you can wipe it clean, really easy, and you know, you can get a nice big piece and it'll protect the whole area. And then just some old tea towels just for mopping up and resting spoons on and things like that. And then I've got my big mixing spoon, gonna need that today. We've got a mask, of course, and then my gloves, my 2 pairs of gloves, my gloves of choice, a thin pair and then a thicker pair for when I need to get into the hot water. Then we are, of course, we're speckling today, so we're going to need our paintbrushes. So I've just got my usual paintbrushes. If you need to buy some paintbrushes for your speckling, just buy the cheapest ones you can find. You know, just a pack from the pound shop is absolutely fine. So I've got my paintbrushes. Someone asked me actually how I clean them, and all I do is I just, you know, I will have tapped off as much dye powder as possible, and whatever is left on there, I just run it under a really hot tap with just a little bit of washing up liquid. Just run it under a hot tap and it's totally fine, gets rid of everything. I've then got my measuring spoon, which is a 1/8 of a teaspoon, and that leaves us with the dye colours. Very exciting. So I've got 4 colours today. So I'm using actually all of the brands that I use. I've got a Dharma dye, I've got 2 landscape, and I've got a jacquard. So I will tell you the colour and then I'll describe the shade that it is, so you can swap out colours for whatever you can get locally. So I've got 3 pinks. To start with, I've got jacquard dyes and it's number 608 pink. It's just called pink. And this one, I've used this loads over the years. You can actually get lots of different pinks out of this. It can be a very intense pink or it can be a really delicate pink. And it's just that kind of, if you think of a colour pink, this is probably what will come to mind. It's just a nice medium tone pink. We're going to be speckling with this, so it does come out quite intense. But you know, if you're looking for a different sort of shade of pink, you just want a standard pink. So that's the first one. We've then got a Dharma dyes, and this one is Valentine Blush. So this pink is a much sort of softer, it's slightly dusky pink, really, really pretty. It's that, when you think of sort of Valentine's Day and pink balloons and cushions and things like that, it's that gentle, soft pink. It's really pretty. And then the last pink is another landscape. Oh no, it's not another landscape. It is a landscape dyes. And this one is actually, I think this is probably my favourite shade of pink of any dyes that I've ever dyed, I think. And this is Heath. Have we used Heath before? We might have, I think. So it's Landscape Dyes Heath. This one is a truly dusky pink. It's absolutely gorgeous. This one we're going to be using in a way that produces like a sort of faded pink. It's really, really gorgeous, really pretty pink. Then the last colour is another landscape, and this one is Coral. So this one is like as it describes, it's that kind of peachy, apricot-y colour. I love this one in particular because it's, you know, I'm going to speckle with it, so you know I love the landscape for speckling. But if you're going to swap it out, then you want, if you were using jacquard, then the one that springs to mind is maybe salmon. That one would be a good substitute. But you just basically want that corally colour, sort of slightly orangey pinky shade, apricot-y, peachy coral colour. So that's all of our dyes.
yeah, that's everything. Oh, and my dye book, of course, with my recipe in. Gonna need that. So that's everything we're going to need. Our yarn is already soaked, so we're ready to get dyeing. Okay, so we've got our pot heating up on the stove, and there's just about maybe 1.5 inches or so of water in there, and another scoop of citric acid, so a tablespoon I'd say, of citric acid in the pot, and that's just heating up nicely. So I'm going to get my yarn in the pot. So let's lift up 2 skeins, squidge it out. So this will be nicely soaked through with the citric acid. And then I'll just give them a little shake just to loosen off all those fibres so it doesn't clump together too much. And then we're going to drop them in, one on one side, one on the other. And as they go in, I just kind of move them around. And we want as much surface area of yarn as possible on top of the water. So I'm going to take a minute doing this, just having a nice faff around to get as much of your yarn poking up above the water. And then your ends, I just tend to sort of squidge them down a little bit and sit them there. So you can see that's completely covered with yarn, and I can really barely see any water. There's just little tiny pools, which is perfect. That's just what we want. So that's heating up nicely. As soon as we see it, and it's just starting to simmer now actually, so as soon as we see a little bit of movement in the water, then that's going to be hot enough for us to start speckling our colours in. So once you get up to that simmering point, you can turn your heat down. We don't want it to be boiling at all. We just want to maintain a really nice hot temperature. And that looks good. And we can speckle in our first colour. So we're starting with jacquard and the pink. The jacquard dyes are very powdery, very fine powders. I always sort of take the most care with the jacquard, and the dharma as well. They tend to be very powdery. So here we go with the jacquard, and we're just following the same technique as we've been doing the whole way through. So I'm going to find an area that I want to speckle and just drop some colour on. Just tap it on like that. You can see that this is actually quite an intense pink when you use it like this, and that's just what we want. With this colourway, we want to depict the rose in the, we want to get a nice shot of pink, so you want to know it's a pink colour, but then we want some variations in that pink. So that's why we're using the Valentine blush as well, because that's a different shade of pink. And then the apricot, that is going to show the rose just as it's sort of opening, because as this particular variety starts to open, it's got an apricot tinge to it, and then it turns to a true pink once it's fully open. So we're showing all the aspects of the rose with this. So you can see I've gone over it once. I'm just going to have a little bit more, because it's better to go gentle. You have to go surprisingly gentle with this. I've seen a lot of people that have been dyeing yarns, and they're saying, you know, I've got to stop being so heavy-handed. That's not a fault, you know, they all come out beautiful regardless. But you do have to be surprisingly gentle. That's looking pretty good. It's a gorgeous shade of pink, this, has got to be said. Oh, I love pink. I know there's people out there that don't like pink. I don't understand it, quite honestly. That's the first colour done. Now, I'm going to turn my heat off because this is boiling now underneath. So I'm turning it off for a minute. Next colour now, Valentine blush. And you can see, if I show you, let me open up the jacquard. You might not be able to tell. It's difficult, but the jacquard is a much more deeper sort of pink. This one looks more dusky. You probably can't tell on camera, but it is. So this one again is a very fine powder. So same principle really, go gentle. So I'm going to find my first area, and I'm going to go sort of off to the side a little bit so that it you can see this particular colour in its own right. Can you see the different shade there? Much more dusky. But then what I'm also going to do is just go over a little bit the area that I've been on already, because that will just intensify some of those areas of pink. So off to the sort of side a little bit, and this will give us lots of different shades of pink. And this, I mean, this rose is quite a delicate shade of pink. And you could argue that these dyes, as I'm speckling them on, are not that delicate. You know, they are quite intense. But our coordinating yarn is going to show that delicacy of pink. And hopefully you can see, as it sort of absorbs in, you can see the different shades of pink that are going on. That looks good. So that's our pink. So I'm now moving to the coral. And if you look at this one, if you can see into the pot, let me get my brush, it's really granular, it's like sand. When you move it around like that, there's no dust comes up or anything like that. It's why these ones are so good for speckling, I find. Right, so what we're going to do, same as before, when we've dyed these speckles up, we're going to go into the areas that are currently undyed, and we're just going to drop some of the coral in there. Because it's a granular, you kind of have to sort of scoop it on your brush like that. Go down and just drop some on. And because again it's granular, it takes a little minute for the colour to develop, to it to sort of soak into the yarn. So I am going, as you can see, I'm going really delicate. I'm going to go up here on the ends of the skeins, give them a little bit. And you can see how lovely, look in that area there, can you see those lovely fine speckles? So beautiful. And if you compare it to the jacquard, can you see here, because this is a really fine powder, it spreads much more than the landscape here, which you can see here as well, produces these gorgeous little speckles. So that's our first layer. I'm going to turn the heat back on and just let that heat up until again it's simmering, and then we just need to leave that for a good 5 minutes or so to set that first layer of colour. What I sometimes do to help it along is put a sort of lid on it. I don't have the glass lids to these anymore because I just never really used them, so I recycled them. But what I do, which is just as good, is I just get a piece of foil and I sort of make it into a rough round, rough circular, and just pop it on top, and then just let that heat away just for 5 minutes. See, that's bubbling up already. So turn it right down, and I will just put a cover of foil on that for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back, we'll turn it, and we'll repeat that process. Okay, so that's had between 5 and 10 minutes, I would say, just sort of gently simmering away, and I've given it a little check, but all you do to make sure that we've got a good set of dyes, just find an area and just press it down with your spoon, and you can see there's no movement of dye there, and there's no dye coming up. So I mean, I'm just going to go in one of these areas too, because it's a bit more intense there, and again, no bleeding there of colour, and that's clear coming up. I mean, I never worry too much if you get a little bit of dye still there, you know, and it goes somewhere else on the yarn, because essentially that's all set. So what we're going to do now is move the skein. So as I lift it up, we'll be able to see that here where we've speckled, you can see there's lots of gorgeous speckles. Oh, doesn't it look lovely? But if we turn it around, ooh, look at that. We need to solve this and get some speckles on the other side. So what I like to do is just move it a little bit, just for sake of being as random as possible. And then what I also do is I turn the skein over, and that will now expose, if you look down here, all of this area that doesn't have many speckles, and there's some here as well. But I mean, we don't mind having some areas, you know, that are undyed. That's essentially what a speckled yarn is. You know, you will have undyed areas, but we're just going to get some dye on the other side. So again, just drop it down
expose all of those areas that we want to get some speckles on. That looks good. Oh, I'm so happy to be doing some pink yarn. I can't even tell you. Well, I can tell you because it's all I've been talking about, isn't it? There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to repeat the process that I've just done. So I'm going to start with my jacquard pink, a little bit on the brush and tap because it's that powder. And then all of these blank areas, I'm going to drop some colour on. Bit. Oh, that was, see, that's a big blob there. Don't worry if that happens. It's not a problem. It's quite nice, I find, to, you know, when you'll get a few stitches that are really intensely pink. I'm going to go for the top of the skein as well, just to give it a little bit. Definitely a bit there, tiny bit there, tiny bit here. Okay, next with the Valentine blush. So same thing. Find those areas. Now my water's boiling quite a lot there. I'm going to turn it off again. This one over there. And you can see we've just got rid of those really big white blank areas. We'll still have some when we're knitting, but that's just what we want because that's when you will see the background colour, the coordinating colour more. I think that's good. I know it's tempting to keep going, but really less is more. And now with the coral, just going to find those little areas to just get a bit of that orangey corally colour in. I love peach as well as the colour. I never used to, do you know, I was never a fan of peach historically, but these days I absolutely love it. Especially that kind of tangerine-y, peachy sort of colour. And I was never a fan of orange. I quite like orange now in my old age. What do we think? Do we think that looks good? Because we don't want to overpower it with the coral. We just want to get those little bits. Because essentially this is a pink yarn. But as with anything, it's really good to have a bit of extra interest. That's good. So that's the colour complete. I've put my heat back on. Just bring it up to a nice temperature, so when it starts to simmer, turn it right down and just again let that heat away for a good 5 to 10 minutes. I will check again with my spoon to make sure that everything's set, and then I'm going to pop it outside to cool down, but I will put a little lid on it just to keep the heat in, to make sure we get a really good set so that it cools down slowly. Okay, so we are on to our coordinating skein now, and this is going to be a lovely, soft, gentle, dusky pink. So I'm only using one colour for this, nice and easy, and it's the Landscapes Heath that we're going to use. So I've got in my pot here, it's about, I don't know, maybe 1/3 to 1/2 full of water, and we've got another scoop of citric acid. And into the water that's now heating up, I'm going to drop in about 1/8, so one of these teaspoons, which is 1/8 of a teaspoon. So there we go, and you can see the shade, it's a gorgeous colour. So I'll drop that in, and as it drops in you can see it looks very sort of peachy coloured, but in reality it comes out more of a, I mean it does have peachy undertones, but it's very, very dusky, it's gorgeous. Ooh, I love watching the dye do that. So in with your spoon, and give it a nice wish around, and it's not we've not got a lot of dye in there at all, because we don't want this to be a really punchy in your face pink. We want a really soft, gentle pink, because we just want it as a nice background foil for those really beautiful speckles that we've just created. So it's best to go a little bit, put your yarn in, have a look at it, see if you need some more. So you can see now we've got a really gorgeous colour in there, and there's really not a lot of dye in there at all at the moment, but that is fine. So that's heating up nicely, and it is quite hot, there's steam coming off there, so we can get our yarn in. So I'm going to grab my 2 skeins, give them a good squidge, and and a shake. So what we're going to do is drop them in quite slowly because I want it to look quite gradienty through the yarn. So I'll probably end up with, really, the top bit won't be dyed very much at all. So in it goes. Yeah, it's a lovely delicate colour. And as it goes in, just use your spoon to give it a wish around. And just drop it in really nice and slowly so that we get a really nice graduation of colour. And you can see that last bit as I put it in, you can see the differences in tones here. We've got a nice bit of colour on here, not very much here. And isn't this the most gorgeous colour? It makes me think, do you know this bit here? It makes me think of like faded wedding dresses or something. You know, it's just gorgeous, just beautiful. And that dye will have all gone now. You can see it's gone because there really wasn't a lot of dye at all. We don't want it any more intense than it is down here. This really is a really lovely gentle colour. But up here you can see there's really not a lot at all. So what we're going to do is just move that a little bit, not fully all the way, maybe to there. Look, oh, it's so pretty. This dye colour is just absolute heaven. How lovely is that? Oh, I can't get over it, how pretty it is. So when I stop looking at the yarn, I'm going to drop a bit more colour in so that we just get a little bit of colour on these bits here, and it will intensify these areas a bit, but that's fine because up here it's still really nice and gentle and there's not a lot of dye going on at all. So I'm going to lift it up and drop it in. Now I'm not putting in as much as I did before. Let's go with that. So it's kind of like very flat eighth, not quite flat eighth. Lift it up, drop your dye in, give that a little wish around. And when I drop it in this time, I'm going to drop it in a bit faster. See, there's not a lot of dye in there at all, so we might tweak it a bit more, but let's see. That's dissolved, so in it goes quite quickly. There we go. And we'll see what that's like. Oh, it's so pretty. So that will have gone now, that dye, literally in seconds. Let's have a look. What do we think? Do you know what? I'm going to add just a little spot more. I'm going to be bold and add just a little spot more. So just going to move it a tiny bit again. So I'm going to go with about half of an eighth. So literally not very much at all. Drop it in. Because I do want this to be really lovely and soft. So just drop that bottom end back in and let that bottom end absorb that colour. That's perfect. So now you can see we have got colour on all of the skein, but this bit here is very much lighter than this bit here. So we're going to get lots of beautiful tones. When we're knitting this into our blanket, we'll get areas where the speckles are going to show up really bright on these bits, and then there'll be certain other bits where the background colour is sort of shining through. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so I'm going to whop up the temperature and let that start to simmer. It takes longer because there's more water in there. When you speckle, there's barely any water in. So it takes a bit longer. So as soon as that comes up to the point of simmering, I'm going to turn it off, pop it outside to cool down with the other one.
So there we go. That's our 2 yarns all dyed up and cooling outside. So come back in part 2 when we're going to rinse that yarn, we're going to get it dry, and we are going to get on to the knitting. I'm so excited about this one. So I'll see you back soon.
Oh my goodness, what a colourway! Pink! Now,
Ooh,
I love it.
Lovely.
There's nothing not to adore about pink.
Well, I know it's not everybody's favourite, but
I think it gets a bad press.
I don't get it, to be honest.
It gets a bad press.
Obviously, I don't get it.
And I think some people tell themselves they shouldn't like it because girls are supposed to like pink. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Which is completely
but
wrong. It's wrong. Girls aren't supposed to like pink.
You just like what you like, don't you?
You do. Look, my glass. I'm a boy. My glass is pink. I love pink.
The thing is with pink that there's so many different shades and nuances of pink that even if you aren't a sort of in-your-face pink person, I kind of always feel like that there'd be a shade somewhere
There's going to be a shade for you.
Yeah, you know, whether it's a more peachy pink, whether it's a beigey pink, whether it's a bluey pink, you know. I just love pink, so, you know.
We're just starting though.
I'm not going to defend myself.
We're just starting in this episode of My Favourite Blanket because when we come back we will of course be doing all the knitting, and then Kay will as well be showing us how to read our knitting. I can't wait.
And I'll show you the finished section as well because I have completed it.
But right now it's time for a special What's Off Your Needles with that yarn that you've just seen dyed up.
Yes.
Yes, so Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
So,
what a slick transition.
Very.
You've taught me everything I know.
I know. I'm proud of myself.
Now, Kay's the slick one and I'm the useless one.
What is off my needles is the pair of fingerless mitts that I was working on a couple of shows ago. I finished them and they have now been received by the person that I gave them as a gift to, so I can comfortably show you them now. So if you remember, I showed you these mitts, but I was a little bit vague about the yarn. I just said, oh, it's yarn that I dyed myself, because, you know, it was this yarn, and I didn't want to... I said to Dad at first, I can't show these because this is yarn that's coming up on My Favourite Blanket. And he said, you can, just don't say. Because, you know, you didn't know at the time.
No.
And likely now, you wouldn't have made the connection kind of thing. Anyway, I did it. But it's not the physical skein you saw me dye. It's my test skeins, because I always do a test run. And I dyed these up and I just love them so much. And the friend that I gave them to also loves pink. I said, I'm going to use these. So yeah, I used the two yarns and I striped them in those lovely mitts. So it's just a plain fingerless mitt. I've got several fingerless mitt patterns out there actually. I think I used the sort of template for the dynamite mitts, but just did it plain and just alternated the two colours. So I think it's really interesting to see how the speckles knit up in something that's a very small circumference rather than like the big blanket, and I think it knits up beautifully. I'm really, really pleased with how the speckles knit up.
I think they look great.
Yeah,
and I think the recipient will be loving them.
Yes, she very much. Yeah. She said they were lovely and she was going to look forward to wearing them. So
perfect.
That's always good, isn't it?
What a wonderful What's Off Your Needles.
Yay.
And wonderful to see that yarn, like we said before, knitted up into something other than the blanket.
Yes.
But to see the yarn knitted up into the blanket, we need to see how to knit it into the blanket.
We do, don't we?
And to do that, we need to return for the second part of My Favourite Blanket.
Welcome back everybody to part 2 of My Favourite Blanket. So we dyed up our beautiful yarn in part 1, and then once it had cooled down outside I brought it in. I gave it a lovely rinse in some wool wash. I'm still using the Eucalan lavender. To be fair, that is my favourite, so I probably will always use that one. So yeah, I gave it a lovely rinse, and then I actually hung it out on the washing line to dry this time. It's the first time this year I've been able to dry it outside, and there was a really lovely breeze. So it dried on the washing line within a few hours, which is lovely because I feel it does kind of add something to the yarn. Probably not physically, but in my brain I feel like it's just maybe a teeny bit fluffier because it's had that fresh air. So yeah, it's all dry and beautiful now, and I've got 2 of them skeined up here, and it's just so pretty. I'm so pleased with the speckles this time. They've come out lovely and clear, and what I mean by that is there's not a lot of bleeding, so they just stand out against the undyed sections really well, and it's so pretty. And that pink, oh, it's just such a pretty combination. If you like pink, this is definitely one for you. And it does make me think of that gorgeous flower. I love that flower so much. So here I've got my other 2 skeins, which are the ones that I'm going to work with today. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is get these wound up, and I've got something extremely exciting to tell you on that front. So I will get set up and then I will reveal all. Okay, so I'm all set up now to wind my yarn into cakes, and you won't believe it, guess what? Do you know I had problems with this ball winder and it was giving me nightmares? Well, I kept getting all these people telling me that you need this feeder arm here, and theirs, they've got the same one, and you really need to pull it out to secure it. Well, I tried doing this numerous times and it just wouldn't pull out. I'm like, it doesn't pull out. And then one day I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a really good pull, because someone said to me, you know, you really do have to put some pressure on it. And it pulled out and locked into place. And I immediately wound about 4 skeins of yarn and they were all perfect. I was so thrilled, and I've been dying to tell you, so I'm going to show you. So at the minute, can you see this feeder arm is like really loose, and this was my problem. It was just waggling all over the place and causing me a nightmare. You've really got to pull it out really hard, and it feels wrong because I feel like I'm going to break it. But you know, I've done it a few times now and it's okay. So you really have to, so make sure it's secured first on your desk. You really have to pull it out. And did you hear that click? And it's now locked into place. Joy upon joys. My ball winder is resurrected. So thank you so much to everyone who kept saying to me, you've really got to pull that arm out, Kay, and it will lock into place. And I was like, mine won't do that. But yes, it has, and all is good. So thank you. Right, so I've got one of my skeins here. So let's get winding into a cake. Scissors. I've already swatched this, I've dyed it up. You know, as with all of these colours for my favourite blanket, what I do is I go through a process of colour development. So within that, I will choose the flowers, I will then look at the dye colours, I'll then go away and get my dye pots out and I'll swatch them effectively, and then I might tweak them. So it's quite a long process. So I have already swatched this and it's just beautiful. So let's take off all of the little ties. I'm going to try and guess again the one that's holding it together, but I'll probably guess wrong. Oh, we might be all right. I think it is this one. Yes, guessed correctly. So that's all of them off. So then you have to, if you look at where your ties are, your ends are coming out, you'll have one that will be on the outside and then there'll be another one that's on the inside. Now it might not be obvious at first, but if you just sort of pull it out a little bit, I think that one's on the inside. So let's just tuck that there. And I think this one's pulling, yeah, this one's pulling from the outside. Do you know what it's not? It's on the inside. When this happens, right, so I've started pulling it out and it's actually pulling from this side here. Instead of going back to the other end and rewinding this bit, what I often do is I just flip the skein over. So if you just go around and turn it like this, that will then bring that end to the outside. Yeah, that's pulling from the outside now. So let's do this and watch now, just watch now. I'm doing it with you. It won't do it properly, but it has every time. So I don't now need to hold anything. It just does it. I just wind. Oh, so exciting. I just hold this to get it going. So let's get rid of that loose bit of yarn that was there. And then look, I don't need to hold anything. I just wind and it stays put. Oh, small things keep me happy. So I'm going to wind away and get both of these wound up into cakes. And look at that. Oh, look at my beautiful yarn cake. Oh, it's so so pretty. And wouldn't this colour be the most gorgeous colour for a summer bridesmaid dress? So pretty. So I will get on and wind up the speckled skein, and then we can get on with the knitting. Okay, so I've got both of my beautiful yarns here now, caked up. Oh, and those speckles are just so yummy. Oh, I love this one so much. So we're ready now to start knitting the next section. So we are now on section 7. So it's the third section of Fancy Business, and we're continuing as we've been doing for the last 2 sections. So it's exactly the same 4-row repeat that we've been working through the last 2 sections. But what I'm going to do today, because it struck me when I was working my eyelet row, it struck me that I actually read my knitting in a particular way to make sure that I'm always on track with the eyelet row, and I thought it might be useful to show you how I do that. So I'm going to get started now, and I'm going to show you once again just how to get started on the first row, and then I'm going to whiz through the first couple of rows and then show you how I keep track of my eyelets on that eyelet row. And I've never ever, touch wood, I've never ever gone wrong, and I've knit a lot of these sections now, and I've never once gone wrong with an eyelet. First of all though, we need to get started with our new yarn. So as always, I'm going to start off my first row working the first 4 stitches in the old yarn. That just keeps that edge super neat, and it makes weaving in your ends so much easier. So here we go. So this first row is just knit the last 2 stitches, and then we work the lift over decrease. So old yarn and knit 4 stitches. And then we can drop that yarn and bring in the new one. So held double obviously as always, and then loop it over and just start knitting. So when you're on your second stitch, just make sure you are knitting with your working yarn, not your tail end, and then just carry on knitting. So you can see I've got my little marker here, and I keep that there. You know, it's very simple. That marker is there just to tell me which is the right side and which is the wrong side. And you need that more, I find, in that very first section when you've not got that changing yarn that helps you see which is the wrong and which is the right side. But I just keep it there as a little mental reminder that I'm on either a row 1 or a row 3. Because it's always there when you're on a row 1 and a 3. So here we go. I'm knitting away happily, and I'm going to work now through the first 2 rows, and then I will come straight back and I'm going to show you how I keep track of my eyelet row. Okay, so we're about to start now with row 3, which is our eyelet row. So I'm going to get this started, and then I'm going to show you how I keep track of those eyelets to make sure that you're not going to go wrong and put them in the wrong place. So we start off this row with a knit 4. So we effectively work, first of all, we work like half a pattern repeat. So we go knit 4. And then we do a knit 2 together and a yarn over. So I'm going to do those, and then I will show you how I monitor it. So we've done our first eyelet there. So from now on, the way that I sort of mentally count this is it's effectively knit 8, knit 2 together, yarn over. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll knit 8, 7, 8. So now we're ready to do the knit 2 together, yarn over, so to produce the eyelet. So the way that I check that I'm putting it in the right place is if you look at your fabric, and if you look at your eyelet that you've previously done down here and follow it up, it'll be underneath the 4th stitch on your left hand needle. So can you see that? There's the eyelet, and if you go directly up, it's under that 4th stitch there. that's what I check every time before I place an eyelet. I just have a quick look, and I have a look and I go, yep, I know that's right. So we can now do our knit two together, yarn over, and then repeat. So I'll do it one more time. 6, 7 and 8. So if we look again, there's the eyelet there, follow it up, and there it is underneath our 4th stitch on the left needle, so I know that I'm bang on. So if you ever get to that point and there's only 3 stitches, for example, you can then check back and you'll find that you might have knit 9 stitches instead of 8, or the other way around. So it's a really brilliant way of keeping track, and this is exactly what I've been doing the whole way through this and the whole way through the other blanket which I showed you last time, and like I said, I've not gone wrong a single time. So it works perfectly. So I'm just now going to happily carry on working all the way through that eyelet row. There we go then. That's everything you need to know to work through section 7 of my favourite blanket and the beautiful Queen of Sweden rose. Isn't it just like absolute rose perfection? I sent a picture to my friend actually of this rose because it was just so perfect, and she thought it was a peony. And you know, it is funny, these roses, these David Austin roses, certain ones of them do look very much like peonies. I think they've got that really sort of full cup shape of the peony. Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to have a garden full of these gorgeous roses at some point in my future. So thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoy dyeing up your gorgeous rose inspired yarn if you choose to dye it up. If you don't, go stash diving, find yourself some beautiful pink yarn and get knitting it into your blanket. So thank you everybody, and I will see you again really soon for more My Favourite Blanket.
What a wonderful episode. Now we are not at home. I can't say it. The Blackadder phrase.
Oh yeah, no, you can't say that.
No mistakes shall be made in the knitting of said blanket.
No.
Thank you so much for helping all the people out there who are just like me.
Oh, well, you're very
Because I'm sure there's
welcome.
lots of them.
Well, it just, like, as I said in the video, it just occurred to me when I was knitting it the last time, actually, when I was knitting through the poppy section, I was thought, oh, yeah, I do this to keep track of it. I thought, right, I'll show that next time.
Perfect.
And it might be that you'd already realised that and that's what you were doing, but it also might not be. And so you might find it useful. And I've knit this section now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and I've not made a mistake, touch wood, in any of the sections. So I know it works. It works well. So yeah, I hope you found that useful. And I've got here the blanket to show you. So that's the finished pink section. And I just love it. This shade of pink, you know, it's amazing that the background colour, although it was a really subtle pink and that is what I wanted, when you put the two yarns together, it really does give a lovely overall shade of pink. And the speckles just look beautiful. And look, now we've got 3 sections of fancy business.
Raspberry Ripple ice cream.
It does look like Raspberry Ripple. You're absolutely right. It does look like Raspberry Ripple. But that flower, oh my goodness, how beautiful is that rose? Yeah. Just like heaven. It's my perfect rose. And those particular roses of David Austin, they do all kinds of varieties, don't they? But the one that I love the most is the ones that look like that. Do you know that loads of petals and they're very, very cup-shaped, very rounded. They're almost like a... Sarah said this to me. Is it a peony? Are they almost like a peony? In the shape of them are just absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to have a garden full of them at some point.
Wonderful.
But yeah, that's the pink section all done. I think it looks lovely following the purple and then the blue and the green of that section.
So that's the end.
Yeah,
of another My Favourite Blanket.
Yes.
What a wonderful episode. Thank you so much. But next time,
very welcome.
The Rise and Fall of the Monasteries is back. And we're going to be visiting one of our absolute favourite abbey sites.
Yes.
It's set on the banks of a river. I know, like they all are, but the difference is this one is set next to what is claimed to be Britain's fastest flowing river.
Is it really?
It is.
Right.
It's also slap bang next to a disused railway track with old railway bridges and all sorts. So it's a really picturesque and gorgeous place. So it's going to be a wonderful episode, and that's coming next time. Right now, though, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Now then, in our last pop show, I asked for recommendations for handspun, and my goodness, our Bakery Bear patrons came through.
Yes.
Who is it that we're getting it from there? Can you remember?
Now, someone recommended it's an American company, and it was something farm. I'll be able to find it out.
We'll pop it in the show notes.
We will pop it in the show notes.
But we will be showing it as soon as it arrives.
Yeah. Now, this particular organisation I went on, the yarn looks absolutely amazing. So I went onto the website and I'm going to order some of this for Dan. I know it's in America, but Dan loved it, I loved it. I said, right, let's just pay the shipping and we'll get you some. So I went on to order it, but there was no option for international shipping. So I actually contacted the owner, and she sent me an email back and said, yeah, I can do you an order outside of the website. Just tell me what you want. So I have emailed her and I've told her what I want. So I'm just waiting now to hear back from her, hopefully with an invoice that I can just pay, and we'll get that sorted. But the yarn looks amazing. It's really BFL. Yeah. And she actually farms the sheep and then produces the yarn as well.
So really looking forward to that, because it's machine spun, hand spun.
I think it is. It's like, do you know that one that's really expensive? And again, I can't remember the name of it, but you all know the one. Do they say it's dyed in the wool or something?
Right.
You'll know the one I'm talking about. Yeah. And it is a machine. Yeah, it is a machine spun yarn, but it's really expensive.
It looks like the perfect hand spun.
Yeah.
So
it's very much like that.
As soon as we get our hands on it, we should be showing it to you, but I'll link who we've got it from in the show notes below, so you can go and take a look yourself. Our Summer of Stitching continues. The Beachcomber Socks course is now over.
Yeah.
You can binge watch the entire series anytime you like here, which is also linked to the show notes below. Yeah. Now it's time to get cross-stitching, baby.
Cross-stitching is next.
And our beginner guide to cross-stitch is available from the 20th of June.
Not long then.
Not long at all.
Brilliant.
And it's an absolute tour de force.
Yeah.
Literally every question you might have if you're a beginner cross-stitcher is answered in 29 minutes of tabbed excellence. So yes, you can jump to bits if you need to jump to bits.
If you think it's just too much. Yeah.
And then on the 27th of June, we commence the Beach Days cross-stitch.
Yes.
And then we're on to the bag making. So there's so much going on. It's unbelievably exciting.
Very exciting.
Kay's bought some yarn.
I've just got one skein of yarn to show you, and it's a ball of opal, actually. I saw this being knitted on Instagram by a knitter. I think it was Gail. Was it Gail in Toronto? I think it was, because she's like an opal goddess. And she was knitting this yarn. I was like, oh, what is that opal? And she always details what it was. So, of course, I went searching for it, and it was sold out everywhere. I looked everywhere that I could think of. I even looked at shops in Europe. Couldn't find it, because this is a German yarn. Couldn't find it. And then I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to look on Woolstack, which is a UK company. And they had some. So I ordered two, actually, one to send to a friend, and I've sent that off, and one for me. But look at this lovely yarn. Look at the colours. This is really unusual for opal. Look. Pink, yes, there's pink in there. But it's pink and purple and yellow and green and some speckling going on. It's just gorgeous. I think it's very untypical for opal, so I had to get myself some of that. And this one, the range is, I think that means rainforest, is Regenwald 18. So that's the range, and it's the one that's got this sort of multicoloured seahorse on it. And the colourway number is 11202 if you want to go looking for it yourself. But I found it really hard to find the range. It was quite easy to find the range, but this particular colour was like gone in everywhere I was looking. But you might be able to find it locally to you. And clearly it's sold because it's just so pretty. And I can't wait to knit these up. I'm actually going to knit this for Dan. And I know as we were saying earlier, we don't typify something as being girlish or boyish.
I don't think the world does anymore.
I don't think the world does anymore,
Thank
no,
goodness.
and quite rightly. Yeah. So I'm going to knit these for Dan, and I think he'll really like them.
Yes!
So fun and pretty. And I love that. That must be a real animal, that seahorse, that multicoloured seahorse. Seahorses kind of freak me out a bit.
Cool, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. The end of another wonderful episode.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care of yourselves.
Yes.
Lots going on between now and next time. But we will see you in 2 weeks back here for a brand new Baker Bears video show, which, as I already mentioned, is going to feature the rise and fall of the monasteries. We'll see you then.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
It's sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down